Hey everyone, welcome to the very first ever official Ionic quarterly launch event. We're going to try to make a habit of these every few months, update you all on everything we've been working on here, help you get value out of it, help you integrate this stuff into your apps. So we're going to be going over updates across our open source projects and also our commercial products. So I'm Max Lynch, co-founder and CEO of Ionic here, and I'm going to be your host. But all of the good stuff is going to come from actual core Ionic team members who are going to update you on everything they've been working on over the last few months. And we've got some really, really exciting stuff planned. Before we get into that, though, as we all know, the last 12 months have been some of the most difficult months in recent memory. And we sincerely hope everyone in the community has been staying safe, staying healthy. The team here has been heads down, continuing to focus on our mission of building out the most accessible app development platform focused on enabling web developers to build awesome apps with the skills and technology they love. We are web developers ourselves, and we're stubborn as hell. We want mobile development to be just as good as web development. We want to use the same technologies we use to build web apps to build mobile apps, whether that's Angular or React or Vue or Svelte or Stencil, or it's UI frameworks like Tailwind or Material. We want to build mobile apps just like we build server-side apps, just like we build desktop apps, just like we build web apps. So that's what we're focused on here, is enabling you as web developers to do that. And we are singularly focused on that mission. And it's been working. Today, Ionic powers over 15% of all App Store apps. And that doesn't even begin to include all the app development that's happening behind the scenes. So there's so many companies today, so many teams who are building internal apps that are not consumer focused. They will never see the light of day in the App Store, but they are powering really meaningful and important business functions or other use cases. So we're seeing Ionic as kind of a really good fit for those types of apps, and we're thrilled about that. None of this would be possible without an amazing worldwide developer community. There's over 5 million Ionic developers around the world building millions of apps, tens of thousands every single week, every single month. So we're really excited about the amazing community that we have. And we want to thank you for building such awesome stuff. We like to say and joke here that you all in the community are actually better at using our technology than we are. We work on the technology, but you're the ones who actually turn it into amazing consumer apps, business apps, things like that. So you really inspire us, and I just want to thank you. So we've been focusing on pioneering what we're calling a web native approach. And this is an evolution beyond the typical hybrid app. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but that's how we see our platform evolving. And I'm really, really excited to share that with you. So today, the entire Ionic platform is being used to enable thousands of businesses to more easily build, secure, and deliver awesome cross-platform apps using the standard technology they already know, the skills they already have as web developers, without sacrificing on the stuff that matters, like performance or design, or the ability to hire people to work on them. And along the way, we've been fortunate to work with some amazing customers who are building seriously large-scale apps on the Ionic stack, powering billions of dollars of revenue with millions of users, brands that you probably know, some that you might not unless you're in a specific industry, but it's truly a worldwide platform, and these teams are building amazing things. So I want to thank each and every one of these customers who has helped guide our roadmap, has given us feedback on the product, and frankly, it's just been a huge inspiration because what you're doing is incredible, and we're just thankful to be a small part of it. Ionic today is used in pretty much every single industry on Earth. One of the things that's so exciting about it is you can use it to build any kind of app for any kind of industry. All you need is some web development skills, and you can build some really, really amazing things. That being said, we do see pockets of usage in certain industries like banking, financial services, government, healthcare, you name it. And in those specific industries, if you work in one of those, we have been building out specific features and kind of proficiencies that you would probably find valuable. So if you are in one of those industries, definitely stick around. You're going to want to hear about some of the stuff we've been up to, and I think we can add a lot of value to what you're doing. All right, so you're probably wondering when I'm going to get to the good stuff, and we're going to do that today. So we're going to go over new updates across our open source projects, in particular Capacitor, which has become kind of our flagship open source effort, Ionic Framework, and then our commercial products, our enterprise platform, and then Appflow, our mobile CI/CD service. So let's start with Capacitor, our open source native app runtime. We love Capacitor and the power that it unlocks for web developers to build amazing apps across iOS, Android, desktop, and the web using standard web technology, standard web development practices, like just being able to build an app directly in the browser. In fact, you could build a huge chunk of the app without ever running it in a simulator or emulator because you're just building a web app first and foremost. And Capacitor provides APIs that abstract away the platform-specific implementation, so you don't need to worry about all that. So in essence, Capacitor connects the web to native and enables the best of both worlds by providing the tooling and runtime that makes it possible to take any modern web app and deploy it across all these platforms in a portable, cross-platform fashion. So we consider Capacitor to be web first. So you build a web app first, and then you deploy it on all the platforms you care about it, and that app is enhanced with APIs that are available on each platform. And you're doing this in a single code base kind of way. And it's like using web APIs, right? Like when you build a web app, you use web APIs. The amazing thing about them is you don't need to care about how, say, WebRTC was implemented on Windows or Mac. You don't need to care about that. We're working at a higher level of abstraction. And so Capacitor is kind of like a supercharged browser for web apps to enable them to access powerful native functionality, pretty much every native functionality they could need, but through portable web-friendly APIs. So you don't have to write any custom platform code unless you really, really want to. And that's one of the great things that Capacitor enables you, is it enables you to both focus on the web layer and build, a truly portable cross-platform app, but then drop down to native code when you really need to do something at the native level, or use a new API that just came out that doesn't have a plugin or a web API just yet. You can drop down and add just a small amount of code, whether that's Swift on iOS, Android on Java, maybe even JavaScript if you're using some of the new native script stuff that came out. And then you're able to access that from your web app. So you never get stuck. That's kind of our goal. You should be able to build a web app and be able to do anything that you want and never get stuck at a point where you feel like I couldn't do something because Capacitor didn't enable me to. Like, there are options for you to literally have the exact same functionality of any native app. And hopefully you can find a plugin that enables you to do what you need to do. And if not, you just drop down to native code, add it right to your project, use our plugin API to expose it to your app, and you're done. It's really, really exciting. So for those of you who are on Cordova, you can think of Capacitor as kind of a modern Cordova. We were able to build Capacitor in a new era. I think 2018, we started working on it, and there were just different tools available then. Things like TypeScript, things like Swift on iOS. And so we had the benefit of doing this in 2018 instead of 2009, 2010 when Cordova and PhoneGap were created. So we really value Cordova, and we know that it's important for you that if you're thinking of moving to Capacitor, that you can still use the Cordova plugins that you're used to, that you find valuable on Cordova. So from version 1 of Capacitor, we built right into the framework backwards compatibility with as many Cordova plugins as possible. There are some that don't work. It generally is because they're using obscure functionality that is not the mainstream of a Cordova plugin. But generally, we find 99% of Cordova plugins just work in Capacitor. And if you do migrate, what you're going to get is a more modern development experience that uses tools like TypeScript, that lets you version Capacitor, tie the version to each app instead of having a global dependency, the ability to write Swift very easily, et cetera, et cetera. So you're going to benefit from a more modern developer experience, but perhaps most of all, you'll be best aligned with where the rest of the Ionic stack is going. Capacitor is becoming our cornerstone native runtime, and so we really strongly recommend you consider upgrading. We've found that teams can do it in an afternoon or two, and you'll be aligned with where the rest of the Ionic stack is going. You'll benefit from those modern developer experiences, and people love Capacitor, and I'm going to talk about that on this next slide. So we've been thrilled with the response of Capacitor. This year alone, we've seen incredible growth. Capacitor today is installed nearly 500,000 times every single month, and that's been growing very rapidly. And we just had an amazing result on the State of JavaScript survey, where Capacitor was voted the #1 mobile toolkit in terms of user satisfaction. And I want to thank everyone who showed their support on there. It means a lot to us. We're hard at work making Capacitor better, as we're going to see in a few slides here. But we've been thrilled with the result, and we feel like we're just getting started. We think Capacitor has kind of unlocked latent demand for web developers to build mobile apps, and we think a lot of developers feel like Capacitor's enabling them to make this possible, and maybe it was not as possible before. So we're thrilled with the result. We're just getting started, and we hope you like kind of the updates we're going to talk about in a bit. So I mentioned that we are pioneering an evolution of hybrid with Capacitor, and we're calling this web native. So when we refer to an app built with Capacitor, we call it a web native app, not a hybrid app. And the reason we do that is because we feel like what a Capacitor app is at the end of the day is it's a modern web app first and foremost. It's not a hybrid app. It is an app that's running natively on different platforms, iOS and Android, but it's also running that way on Electron and on the web with one code base. It is truly a modern web app that's using a more powerful set of native functionality on the platforms that it runs on. It's using modern tooling, TypeScript, new modern web APIs. And so we want to kind of enter this new era of web native apps and move beyond the hybrid era. And I think the technologies that we're using today are just different enough. The end result is different enough that it's time to kind of move into this new era. So if you want to learn more about web native, we put up a little page at webnative.tech. We're going to be talking about web native over the coming weeks and months. You'll hear us talk about this a lot. So when we refer to web native apps built with Capacitor, this is what we mean. And today we are pushing Capacitor forward yet again, which is something I'm sure a lot of you were hoping I would mention. Today we are excited to announce that we are releasing the release candidate for Capacitor 3. So what that means is Capacitor 3, we feel the API is stable. It's not going to change. We feel like Capacitor 3 is very stable itself. And we want you to start using it a lot more than maybe you did in the beta period. It's time to try it out, see if your app migrates. It probably will. Migration is pretty straightforward, and really help us test it out and make sure we iron out any last remaining bugs. But otherwise, in probably a few weeks after we go live with this, we'll be looking at the actual final release. So we're very, very close. It's not quite the final release yet. We wanted to do a release candidate phase just because, part of Capacitor is it's the foundation of your app. It needs to be incredibly stable. One of my goals when we built it was I want Capacitor to be the most stable mobile toolkit, mobile runtime out there. And I think we're achieving that. But to do that, we want to be a little careful. So we're excited to announce Capacitor RC today of Capacitor 3. And I'm incredibly excited to show off what's next in this new version. We're going to have Adam Bradley who's the Director of Open Source Technology here at Ionic, run you through what this means. But first, because this is one of the most significant releases in our history, we've been working on something that we usually don't do, which is a teaser video. And we're not quite ready to share this with the world, so this is just a teaser for you all here at the event. But I want to run this video we've been working on. It just gets me excited. I hope it will you as well. So let's run that video. All right. Well, I'm all fired up. I hope you are too. I'm not getting that song out of my head. And I'm going to pass it off to Adam Bradley, who, like I said, is the Director of Open Source Technology here at Ionic. He's going to run you through everything coming in Capacitor 3 and tell you how you can get started testing it out. All right, Adam, you want to take it away?
All right, thanks, Max. So today I'm excited to talk about Capacitor 3 and what we have in store with the latest version. First up is everyone's favorite topic, and that is performance. As you know, when it comes to building world-class applications, especially those that need to run on multiple platforms, great performance is a must. And so with Capacitor 3, we work to improve this just a little bit more. Some of the updates include improved launch time, reduced app size, and only pulling in the features that your app is using. So with version 3, we separated out the official Capacitor plugins from the Capacitor core. Until now, 20 plus official plugins such as camera, geolocations, file system, and many others were bundled together inside the core package. The positive was that this made commonly used plugins pretty easy to use. However, there were also some drawbacks to this approach. Since all the plugins were bundled within core, your app would also contain all of the code for each of these native features, even the ones that you weren't using. And in doing so, the permissions also had to be configured inside of iOS and Android. So for example, we'd hear, why does my app ask for permission to use the camera even if I'm not using that feature? Now with Capacitor 3, you can specify the features that you need. And most of the APIs have stayed the same too, so upgrading should be fairly easy. And an added benefit to this is that it's lowering the app size and potentially improving the startup time. Next would be how each plugin can lazy load a platform implementation. Previously, all JavaScript implementations were bundled together inside of the app's main.js file, which often made the main file larger than it needed to be. By lazy loading implementations, it helps keep the bundle size down, but also ensures platform-specific code is not accidentally executed at the wrong time. So for example, Electron code should only be executed from the Electron platform, and previously bundling all platforms together could have caused issues. So now with them dynamically imported only when they're needed, it can help avoid any platform conflicts. And what we're really excited about is how the core architecture has been redesigned from the ground up. So when we first started Capacitor, we had a few crazy ideas on how to create native applications powered by web technologies. Almost 3 years, 2 major versions, and all the countless Capacitor apps created since, the community feedback has been vital in helping us shape and improve the architecture. Not only for today, but we feel we've created a stable architecture to be built on top of for years to come. And it's not just optimizations to the internal code that we've made. There's also a number of improvements to the Capacitor's developer experience. On the native side, we've added support for iOS 14, Xcode 12, and Android 11. Each new version brings performance and security updates, so we know how important it is to update them as soon as possible. As part of our promise to deliver a modern mobile development experience, we work to support them pretty much as soon as they're released. And Capacitor's tooling has received a bunch of improvements too. By popular demand from the community, we've created a new run command that eliminates unnecessary context switching from code editor to native IDEs. It copies web assets to the native projects, invokes a native debug build, and deploys an app to Android and iOS devices, either physical or virtual. Not only can you build and deploy faster, it frees up your computer's resources since you no longer need to have the native IDEs open while developing and testing apps. And we're huge fans and users of TypeScript, so we couldn't help ourselves that the capacitor configuration file can now be written in TypeScript too. This means you can configure capacitor to be typed in a type-safe manner and include having auto-completion and inline documentation. An additional benefit to this is the ability to set different configurations based on the development environment, such as a dev, QA, or production. This also allows you to use environment variables to customize the app experience from the config. And lastly, the permissions API has been reimagined and standardized. Both the official and third-party plugins leverage the same API now, so plugin creators and developers have a shared experience. And something that's been pretty special to me is that we've always believed in the power of open source and the open source community. With the launch of Capacitor 3, we've taken a fresh look at how we can better assist and work with our wonderful community. We're pretty thrilled with the new Capacitor Community GitHub organization. It hosts high-quality community plugins, all curated by the Capacitor team. If you're looking to build anything cool, let us know. We'd love to have you. This also includes a new documentation generator for your plugins, which standardizes how Capacitor plugins are documented on both the GitHub and the NPM landing pages. Additionally, if there's a plugin you'd like to see built, add a request to the proposals repository. We've had a number of great plugins make it in so far, to include Bluetooth Low Energy and a barcode scanner. Recently, we've increased Capacitor's project transparency too, with public milestones and project planning all on GitHub. And we've also started a Capacitor contributor online meetup, so if you're interested in joining, we'd love to see you there. And in addition to the Ionic Forum, we're now answering community questions and ideas on GitHub discussions. We've increased our community presence across a variety of platforms because we're proud of how welcoming and inclusive our community is. Not only that, but we want to ensure that you can find the native features and plugins that you need to build great apps. Get your questions answered by the Capacitor team and broader community, and in general, feel confident in investing in Capacitor and its ecosystem. So that's Capacitor 3 in a nutshell. I'd like to thank the Capacitor team for all their hard work, but also the large Capacitor community for helping us develop to what we have today. Next up, we've got Liam, who's going to talk about the updates to the Ionic Framework.
Thanks, Adam. I'm so excited to be able to give you all an update on some of the things the Framework team has been working on recently. Ionic Framework is our open source UI toolkit comprised of over 100 components that make it easy to build cross-platform applications regardless of the JavaScript framework you are using. Now, the big topic I want to talk about today is accessibility. Accessibility plays a huge role in the development here at Ionic. We want to make sure everyone can use apps built with our framework regardless of how they interact with their devices. Recent releases of Ionic Framework have greatly improved how our components integrate with assistive and automated accessibility technologies such as VoiceOver, NVDA, TalkBack, and Axe. In addition, we have improved how keyboard navigation works in the framework, allowing you to freely interact with an app through the use of certain keys. You can find these enhancements in components such as Radio, Checkbox, Select, Toggle, and more. I want to give a quick demo of some of the great accessibility enhancements you can expect to have when using Ionic Framework. The demo you are about to see shows how the framework seamlessly integrates with technologies like VoiceOver right out of the box.
First name, text field, is editing, Liam, character mode, insertion point at end. Yes, radio button, unchecked, 1 of 2. Checked, I agree to the terms of service, checkbox, unchecked, end, main. Checked.
So that was a brief overview of the new accessibility features available now in the framework. In addition, the framework team has been hard at work on a new major version of Ionic Framework. Now, I can't show off too much, but I did want to give you a sneak preview of some of the big changes coming. This all-new datetime component brings updated designs and interactions, including full desktop support. And this is just one of the many new features coming to our UI toolkit. I'm also excited about all of the new accessibility features we are shipping in the next major version. Let's take a look at a demo. So this is a development build of Ionic Framework showing off our new accordion component. By default, the accordion will animate as it expands and collapses, but will also account for any motion preferences you have set on your devices. Here, we're turning on the reduce motion setting on iOS, and the accordion respects that by disabling the animation when it expands or collapses. So I hope you enjoyed your sneak preview at the next major version of Ionic Framework, and we can't wait to share more with you later this year. So that's it for me. Now I'm going to hand things off to Josh, who's going to give you all an update on our native solutions.
Thanks, Liam. We've recently released a few updates to our native products, and we've got some upcoming work going on as well. So today, I want to talk to you about a few of those things. Our native solutions focus on providing a stable and secure foundation for developers to build upon. Identity Vault allows developers to leverage biometrics to create a secure authentication process using features today available on today's phones. Offline storage is a mechanism that provides encrypted storage to keep your users' data safe. And AuthConnect is our secure single sign-on solution for any web-native mobile app. You can connect your application's login and sign-up process to an existing OAuth or OpenID Connect provider, be it a hosted solution or your own provider. Recently, we've added Pixie support for Azure B2C. This Pixie-based workflow allows you to create a more secure approach to authentication with Azure Active Directory. We've also recently added support for Keycloak. Keycloak is an open source identity and access management solution aimed at modern applications and solutions. So if you're interested in hosting your own provider, Keycloak is a great option. I want to talk to you about one last feature for AuthConnect. In 2019, we released React support for the UI toolkit here at Ionic. In 2020, we released support for Vue. These two releases allowed us to enable a larger population of developers to create Android and iOS applications. And it provided them with an experience that fit within the workflow of the tooling that they were already using. And it's important to us that our native solutions offer the same level of developer experience, no matter the JavaScript framework that you choose. Today, we're taking native offerings a step further and creating solutions that are framework specific, similar to the experience you have for our UI toolkit. And the first product to get this treatment is AuthConnect. And the first framework where we're going to have this kind of experience is React. We've created an API that uses React hooks in order to reduce the time it takes to incorporate AuthConnect into your application. And we're going to take a look at that now. So now we're looking at this very simple implementation of AuthConnect. You can see my code editor here on the left and my emulator on the right. The first thing we would do is set up an AuthConnect provider, passing in all the configuration information that we would like to define. Within this login page, we're including use AuthConnect and login. So as I click this button, it takes me through the login process. And here you can see that I've logged in. In order to log out, I'm going to click log out. And if we see what that actually looks like, in the same case here, we're using use AuthConnect, using log out, and when the button is selected, we're handling the logout event. And this is what it takes to incorporate AuthConnect with React hooks. So now that you've seen what the approach looks like for AuthConnect, the next product that's going to get this kind of treatment is Identity Vault. Like AuthConnect, we're updating this solution to offer a React Hooks API as well. And after we get these first few releases out the door, we're going to broaden our work and incorporate Angular in both products as well. Finally, I want to talk to you about an upcoming native plugin for Apple Pay and Google Pay. You can use this plugin to make it easier and more secure for customers to purchase within your apps, which also happens to be the most convenient way possible by clicking a purchase button and authenticating using the biometrics and the passcode they already have. If you want to learn more about these products, please go to ionicframework.com/native. Thanks for joining. Next up is Matt, who's going to talk to you about Appflow.
Thanks, Josh. I'm Matt from the Appflow team, and today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Appflow is, and then we'll dive into what's new. Ionic Appflow is our fully integrated DevOps platform. It's going to allow you to build native binaries, perform live updates, and much more. But the difference between us and other DevOps platforms is that we are hyper-focused on what we do best, building out Cordova and Capacitor applications. Because we're focused on that, we can be the most intuitive and easy to set up DevOps platform on the market for Cordova and Capacitor applications. So if you don't know anything about DevOps, that's totally cool. Appflow is here to help. Now, in terms of diving into the specific features, our live updates feature allows you to update any web assets on the fly. So HTML, CSS, images, JavaScript, all of that. If you want to ship a bug fix live to production, Appflow can do that with the live updates service. We can also generate your native binaries. So if you need us to take care of generating the IPA or an APK file for you, we can do that, and we can help you submit it to the Google Play Store or Apple App Store Connect. And if you're the type of person that wants to automate all of this in a true DevOps fashion, we can listen on any of your Git commits and perform any of these actions for you. Without further ado, though, let's dive into what's new in Appflow land. First off, we now have support for Android AAB files. If you're unaware, AABs are, think of them as kind of semi-unpackaged versions of an APK file. This is a new standard from Google that is going to be required around the middle of the year for any submissions to the Play Store. Now, you don't really have to do much on your end except set up the AAB configuration in the Google Play Store. Appflow will automatically generate both the APK and the AAB files for you on every build already starting today. So if you go and perform a native build, we'll just give you both files, and then you can choose which ones you want to download. On top of that, when you're adding a destination, so you want us to push to the Google Play Store for you, you can choose the publishing format that you'd like us to send, whether that be the new AAB specification or the new APK. Up next, we now have Azure DevOps Git support. So if you're using Azure DevOps Git as your Git provider, you can now log in with that in Ionic Appflow, and we'll be aware of any of your projects so that we can automatically watch those commits and perform actions like builds or live updates for you. This is available for any of our scale plan customers, and it joins the ever-growing lineup of Git providers that we support, such as GitHub, GitLab, GitLab Self-Managed, Bitbucket, and Bitbucket Server. All of those are available in our new interface to import your existing applications. So you can connect directly to these, choose a repo, and we'll take it from there. You don't have to use any command line tooling to set up these connections. On top of that, we have added new mono repo support. This has been a highly requested feature for Appflow. We now support things like simple subfolders. If you're just using different folders in your project and you need to tell us which folder your app is actually in, we support that. We support more complicated things like Yarn, Learner, or NX as well. Check out our documentation for our build configuration. And with this, also comes the ability to specify a custom build command. So if you need to customize things a little bit more than normal, check out the docs for our new monorepo support and build configurations. We have also improved our enterprise command line API. So any of our enterprise customers can use our command line tooling to go kick off any of the actions I've talked about, like live updates or native binary builds. Now that API also downloads all of the requisite assets from that type of build. So an IPA file, an APK file, an AAB, your debug DSIM files, web assets, the whole 9 yards. So if you're going to use us alongside your existing CI tooling like Circle, Travis, or Jenkins, you can use this API to automatically kick off any actions in Appflow. And on top of that, we have been working hard to ensure that you can bring any of your Capacitor projects over and use Appflow seamlessly. So before, you might have had to do some special configuration in order to set up a Capacitor app that didn't use Ionic. We have now reduced or eliminated the need for those configuration files when using us with your favorite web code base. So come on over, Capacitor people, check out Appflow. You'll be able to do this with definitely an easier amount of configuration and getting started experience. So if you want to do that and check out Appflow, just go to useappflow.com and you can sign up for an account today and check out all of the features that I've talked about. With that, I'm going to throw it back over to Max to close out the presentation. Thank you very much for joining me.
All right, well, there you have it. Thanks for coming to our first ever quarterly launch event. Like I said, we're going to be making a habit of this. We're working on a bunch of really awesome things. We're not quite ready to share, but we will at the next event. And before we leave, I just want to let everyone know that we're starting our planning for IonicConf 2021 this summer. We had an amazing first Ionic conference last year. We had over 13,000 developers register, so we're looking for an even bigger conference this year. So definitely pay attention for that. We'll be releasing some info on how you can register, potentially even speak at the event pretty soon. So thank you so much, everyone, for taking the time to attend, and we'll see you next time.